They say legends never die, but today, the wrestling world feels more mortal than ever. A cloud of heartbreak now hangs heavy over the WWE Universe, as fans and superstars alike struggle to come to terms with the unthinkable, the passing of a beloved figure whose name meant everything to those who watched him rise, fall, and rise again. Someone who, through sheer will, carved his name into the history books, not just as a performer, but as a human being. And now, in a moment that still doesn't feel real, he's gone. The locker room is silent. The fans are speechless. The tributes are flooding in like waves, crashing against a reality no one wanted to accept. WWE has officially confirmed the devastating loss, and the news has shaken the foundation of the entire wrestling community. The superstar's name? A name etched into generations of memories, forever stitched into the canvas he once stood on. This is the story of a man who gave everything to the ring and lost everything outside of it. But before he became a household name, before the bright lights and roaring crowds, he was just a kid. A kid from a small town with nothing but a dream and a pair of worn-out boots. He didn't grow up wealthy. He didn't have connections. But he had heart. He had fight. From the very beginning, life didn't hand him anything, it tested him. A rough childhood, a broken home, a world that told him you're not enough. But deep inside, he believed otherwise. Wrestling wasn't just a sport to him, it was salvation. He trained in garages, in backyard rings, in rundown gyms where the mat smelled like blood, and ambition hung in the air like sweat. He got tossed around by veterans who saw him as nothing more than a skinny kid with a dream. But he kept coming back. Again and again. Because pain, to him, was just part of the journey. His first real break came when he was barely 20. A developmental deal. Not with guarantees, but with opportunity. He showed up early, stayed late. He studied tapes, ran drills until his knees gave out. The coaches didn't believe in him at first, until he stepped in the ring. What happened next would shape a generation. He didn't just wrestle, he connected. Every punch he threw, every line he delivered, every dive off the top rope, it meant something. The crowd didn't just cheer, they felt him. They saw themselves in him. And slowly but surely, that no-name kid became a rising star. And then, in a moment that lives in WWE history, he made his main roster debut. The music hit. The lights dimmed. And he stepped out, wide-eyed, shaking, but ready. He didn't freeze. He thrived. Within a year, he was headlining mid-card matches. Then main events. Then WrestleMania. His first championship win? Unforgettable. A hard-fought 30-minute war that ended with him collapsing to his knees, tears mixing with sweat, title raised above his head. The locker room met him backstage with hugs and handshakes, but it was the fans, those who had stuck with him since day one, who roared the loudest. But like every great journey, this one wasn't without darkness. Fame is a strange thing. It can elevate, but it can also isolate. While he shined in the ring, backstage he battled demons. Injuries piled up. Relationships strained. The pressure to perform, to stay relevant, to always be on, it wore him down. Yet he never complained. He hid the pain behind smiles. He laughed loudest in the room, even when he was hurting the most. Friends say he was always the one who lifted others up, never letting on that he was quietly falling apart inside. And then, came the incident that changed everything. A match overseas. Routine until it wasn't. A bad landing. A twisted spine. Medics rushed in. The arena went silent. Fans watched, helpless, as the man they loved was stretchered out under the flicker of flashing lights. That injury should have ended his career. Doctors said he might never walk the same again, let alone wrestle. But he wasn't like everyone else. Rehab was brutal. Every day was a fight. But through months of physical therapy, countless tears, and an unbreakable spirit, he returned. Not just to walk, but to run. To dive. To wrestle. His comeback match? A standing ovation that lasted minutes. Fans cried. His opponents cried. Even the commentary team couldn't find the words. Because that night wasn't just a return, it was a resurrection. He poured everything into those final years, mentoring rookies, helping with creative, giving back to the business that had given him purpose. And just when it seemed like he had found peace, tragedy struck again. The details were unclear at first. A sudden medical emergency. A call to 911. Paramedics arriving too late. In the hours that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Fans begged for updates. Superstars posted cryptic messages. And then, the WWE made it official. A statement. Just a few short paragraphs. But they hit like a sledgehammer. He was gone. Not from the ring. From the world. Dead. Too young. Too soon. The reaction was immediate. Social media lit up with tributes from every corner of the industry. Legends. Rookies. Fans. Referees. Writers. Everyone had a story about him. A moment. A match. A memory. Because he didn't just work in WWE, he touched it. He shaped it. Triple H tweeted, "The locker room lost a brother. I lost a friend. You were one of the real ones." Roman Reigns posted a photo, just the two of them backstage, smiling. No caption. None needed. Becky Lynch called him a light in the darkest places. Even Vince McMahon broke silence, he was family. And then came the tribute show. An entire Raw episode restructured to honor him. Black armbands. Video packages. His music playing over a tearful arena. Superstars lining the stage. Fans holding signs that said "Thank you and forever." The final shot? His signature pose on the Titantron, slowly fading into black. But maybe the most powerful tribute came not from the ring, but from the fans themselves. Outside WWE headquarters, a makeshift memorial formed, candles, flowers, replica belts, handwritten notes. Thousands gathered. Not just to mourn, but to remember. To remind the world that what he gave wasn't just entertainment. It was heart. He once said in an interview, "Wrestling is the only place I feel whole. I stepped through that curtain, and I'm not broken anymore." And that's what makes this loss so unbearable. Because we didn't just lose a wrestler. We lost a man who turned pain into performance. A man who gave us memories that became milestones in our lives. A man who reminded us that heroes fall. But legends rise again. He may be gone, but echoes of his voice will live on in every arena chant. His footsteps will linger in every entrance ramp. His story will be retold 1,000 times, each time a little more myth, a little more magic. And that's how it should be. Because some superstars burn bright. Others fade. But a few, a precious few, they ignite something in all of us. He was one of those few. And now, the bell tolls. 10 times. Slowly. Final. But not forgotten. In the days following his passing, something incredible began to happen. Wrestling fans, people from every corner of the world, from every generation, came together not to argue about matches or titles, but to mourn as one. To grieve. To share. On message boards, Twitter threads, and Instagram posts, thousands wrote about what he meant to them. Not just as a wrestler. But as a symbol. A light. A reason they got through tough times. A father posted a photo of his young son wearing a replica costume of the superstar, complete with the entrance robe, the wristbands, the taped boots. "You gave my son a hero," he wrote. "He believed he could be strong, because you showed him how." A veteran wrote that when he returned home from service, broken and disconnected, It was watching matches with this superstar that reminded him of who he used to be. He brought me back to life, he said. He didn't even know me, but he saved me. These weren't stories about suplexes or finishers. They were stories about hope. About someone who made people feel less alone. And in that, his legacy began to take on a new shape, something greater than championships. Something deeper than main events. WWE responded not with a brief memorial, but with action. The company announced the creation of a foundation in his honor, a program to support mental health and injury recovery for young wrestlers entering the industry. Named after his most iconic match, the initiative promised to protect the next generation from the same battles he endured in silence. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a transformation. His story, his pain, would become the fuel to change lives. Behind the scenes, those closest to him were still processing the loss. Some had traveled the road with him for decades. Others had only known him a few years, but felt like they'd known him forever. One of his closest friends, a fellow wrestler who started in the same developmental class, said in a tearful interview, "He always made you feel like you mattered. Even if he was in pain. Even if he had 1,000 things on his mind, he'd stop, put his hand on your shoulder, and say, 'You're gonna be all right.' I wish someone had said that to him when he needed it." That's the part that hurts the most. Because behind the lights, the pyro, the applause, he was still human. Still vulnerable. Still quietly carrying the weight of a business that asks for everything, and often gives nothing back. And yet, he gave. He gave us unforgettable matches. Promos that gave us goosebumps. Moments that made us stand up from our couches and scream at the television. But more than that, he gave us pieces of himself, every night, in every arena, with every ounce of strength he had left. There's something profoundly heartbreaking about walking through WWE's Hall of Fame now. His plaque is already there. Fresh. Too fresh. It sits next to legends who lived full lives. Who had time to retire, to reflect, to grow old with grace. He didn't get that chance. And still, he earned his place. There's a quote from one of his last interviews that keeps getting shared by fans. It wasn't meant to be profound. But now, in hindsight, it reads like a farewell. I just want to be remembered as someone who showed up. No matter how hard it got. I showed up. And he did. He showed up when he was injured. He showed up when he was depressed. He showed up when the spotlight shifted and newer, younger stars took center stage. He never complained. He never quit. Even when the world was changing around him, he adapted. Reinvented. Not because he wanted to be famous, but because he wanted to matter. And oh, how much he mattered. At the next WrestleMania, WWE announced that the main event would be dedicated to him. Not just in words, but in action. His signature colors would light the entrance ramp. His theme song would play one last time. And every superstar that night would wear a patch with his initials sewn into their gear. It was a quiet promise from a noisy company: we remember. We honor. We carry you with us. In that moment, as fireworks exploded into the night sky and the crowd rose in unison, it felt like he was there. Not in body, but in spirit. In every cheer. Every tear. Every chant echoing through the stadium. He was still performing. Still giving. Still, showing up. And when the final match ended, the Titantron displayed a simple message. No montage. No commentary. Just white letters on a black screen: thank you. Forever. There are some who say wrestling is just entertainment. Just staged drama with choreographed outcomes. But anyone who's felt their heart race when that entrance theme hits. Anyone who's cried when their favorite gets pinned or rises against all odds. Anyone who's found comfort in watching the same match for the 100th time just to feel something again. They know better. They know that wrestling is real in all the ways that count. And he was one of the most real parts of it. So now, we say goodbye. Not because we want to, but because we have to. Because life moves on even when we're not ready. Even when the heart isn't healed. But grief is proof that he mattered. That we noticed him. That we loved him. And love never dies. The arenas will fill again. New stars will rise. Titles will change hands. The show will go on. But somewhere, in the silence between the chants, in the pause before the bell rings, in the flicker of the lights before a match begins, you'll feel it. A presence. A whisper. A reminder. That once upon a time a man walked down that ramp with fire in his heart and pain in his bones, and gave us everything. And in return? We gave him eternity. Months have passed since his death, yet his name continues to echo through the corridors of WWE. Not as an obligation. Not as a trend. But as an instinct, like breathing. Like memory. Because people don't forget magic. They don't forget someone who gave their soul, night after night, to a business that can be brutal, beautiful, and all-consuming. What's striking isn't just how he lived, but how he was loved. Truly, deeply, unconditionally. By the locker room. By his family. By fans who never met him, but felt like they knew him. At community centers, kids still wear his t-shirt to school, not because he was the best technician in the ring, but because he made them believe they could be something. That they could stand tall. That no matter how hard life gets, you fight back. That's what he embodied. Not perfection. Not invincibility. But resilience. A few months after his passing, WWE aired a short feature during Monday Night Raw. It wasn't promoted. It wasn't teased. It just aired, quietly, reverently. In it, several stars sat in a circle backstage. No scripts. No characters. Just stories. Roman Reigns said, "He always told me, don't fake toughness. Be real. Even if that means crying." That stuck with me. Bianca Belair shared, "He was the first person who told me I could headline WrestleMania. Before I believed it myself." Even legends who had retired years ago showed up to talk about the man behind the character. The human being. The brother. The glue in the room. And then the screen faded to black again, showing never-before-seen footage. A handheld clip. Shot on someone's phone. Him, sitting alone on a steel chair, staring out at an empty arena before a show. The seats are still. The lights are low. But he's smiling. Quietly. Peacefully. He leans over, tying his boots. And then, almost to himself, he says, "This place saved me." That clip has since gone viral. Not because of what he was doing, but because of what it meant. To sit in silence, in the very place that made you, broke you, and remade you again, and still smile? That's strength. The kind of strength that made fans follow him to every brand, every storyline, every injury, every return. Because they weren't just watching a wrestler. They were watching a man walk through fire and come out the other side, sometimes limping, sometimes bleeding, but never stopping. It's why even now, WWE continues to honor him in small, quiet ways. His signature move? It's still used. Not as a gimmick, but as a gesture. As a nod. As a thank you. His catchphrase? Still chanted, only now, when fans shout it, there's a slight pause. Like they're holding their breath. Like they're honoring something holy. And when a new superstar debuts, someone with fire in their eyes and pain in their past, the commentary team often says, he reminds us of, they never finish the sentence. They don't have to. Everyone knows who they mean. Because in the end, his story became the blueprint. The pain, the redemption, the loyalty, the fall, the rise again, he lived the wrestling dream and the wrestling nightmare. And through it all, he stayed. So now, as the company continues forward, As new faces fill the arenas and new titles are raised high, the shadow he left behind becomes a guiding light. A reminder that wrestling isn't just about wins or ratings. It's about connection. And he connected. He gave us a piece of himself every time he stepped through that curtain. And in return, we gave him a place in our hearts that will never be replaced. Not by the next big thing. Not by the next legend. Because some legacies aren't followed. They're worshipped. They're felt. And so, as this tribute draws to a close, we offer one final moment of silence for the man who gave us a lifetime of moments. Not as an end, but as a beginning. A beginning of a legacy that will echo forever in the halls of WWE. The bell tolls one last time. The lights dim. And in the distance, you hear it. The sound of the crowd. The sound of love. The sound of forever. Thank you for everything. Rest in power. You were one of us. You were the best of us. In the weeks that followed, something began to shift, not just in the hearts of fans, but in the very soul of the company. You could feel it backstage. In the subtle silence before a match. In the respectful nods between superstars who once barely acknowledged each other. Grief, it turns out, doesn't just break people, it bonds them. It unearths the rawest parts of who we are and binds them together with the glue of shared memory. This wasn't just the mourning of a career cut short. This was the mourning of a brotherhood tested and transformed. There's a hallway in the performance center now. A long, quiet stretch of wall, tucked away just beyond the main ring. Not many go there. Unless they need to. It started with a single photo. A framed 8x10. Smiling. In his prime. That photo was placed by a former tag partner the day after his passing. No fanfare. No media. Just quiet grief. But then something happened. Someone else added a wristband. Then a quote, scrawled in Sharpie. Then a title replica belt, gently placed on a bench beneath it. Before long, it became a shrine. Not one endorsed by WWE PR or marketing, but by the people who knew him best. It became a space where rookies stopped to reflect. Where veterans knelt and closed their eyes before stepping into the ring again. A place where silence spoke louder than words. And that silence began to change people. Backstage tensions eased. Petty rivalries softened. Because when you lose someone that central, that beloved, you start to ask the bigger questions. Why are we here? What are we fighting for? Who are we when the cameras stop rolling? In many ways, his death became a mirror. And when WWE Superstars looked into it, they didn't see titles or egos. They saw their own fragility. Their own need to be seen, to be understood, to be heard. That's why, just 3 months after his memorial, WWE announced a new wellness initiative, not just for physical health, but for mental and emotional support. Free therapy. Grief counseling. Peer mentorships led by retired legends. It was called The Bell Still Rings. Named after a line he once said to a young talent who wanted to quit, "As long as the bell still rings, you still matter." Those words are now engraved at the entrance of the new wellness facility built in Orlando. And above them, his name. Bold. Unapologetic. Eternal. But the most poignant part of this ongoing tribute? It's what fans have done. Across the world, at indie wrestling shows and tiny high school gyms, you'll find tributes. Commentators mentioning him in whispered tones. Promoters dedicating matches in his honor. New stars wearing armbands with his initials. It's not corporate. It's not coordinated. It's organic. Because true legacy doesn't need a marketing plan. It needs a heart. One night, in Chicago, a rising indie wrestler, barely 22, stood in the middle of the ring after her debut match. She was out of breath, wide-eyed, overwhelmed. The crowd was chanting her name. She took the mic. Her voice trembled. I started wrestling because of one man. He made me believe I was more than just a girl in a crowd. Tonight, this one's for him." She raised her hand to the sky. The crowd rose with her. And somewhere, in that electric air, you could feel it. His presence. Still showing up. Still giving. Still here. Back in WWE, the Superstar of the Year award, once determined by Twitter polls and shallow metrics, was quietly renamed. It's now called the Superstar's Name Legacy Award. Not for the one with the most wins, but for the one who uplifts others. The one who stays late to help a rookie get their promo right. The one who shakes every hand backstage. The one who, even in pain, never stops pouring love into this business. Because that's who he was. He didn't just do the job. He became the job. The beating heart behind the spectacle. And yet, even now, even after all these months, some still struggle to say goodbye. His closest friend in the company, an 18-year veteran known for his stoicism, broke down during a podcast. It wasn't planned. They were talking about WrestleMania. And then someone asked, "Do you miss him?" He looked away. Took a breath. And said, "Every damn day. I miss hearing his voice when I walked into Gorilla. I miss the way he made even losing feel like winning. I miss my friend." And with that, he started crying. Not the kind of cry that cameras love. The kind that comes from a hole no one else can fill. A few days later, WWE aired that clip. Raw. Unfiltered. And fans around the world responded, not with laughter, not with memes, but with gratitude. Because vulnerability in this industry is rare. But he had made it okay to feel. He made grief okay. And that may be his greatest gift. Not the titles. Not the chants. Not the headlines. But the permission to feel. To be raw. To be broken. To be real. And now, as we continue down this road, new rivalries, new champions, new eras, his fingerprints are still everywhere. In the way commentary teams pause to tell deeper stories. In the way superstars hug just a little tighter before going through the curtain. In the way fans cry when someone wins their first title, because he taught us to value those moments. So here we are. Still healing. Still remembering. And yet, still cheering. Because if he taught us anything, it's that the show must go on, but how it goes on, that's what defines the soul of wrestling. He gave us that soul. And now it's our turn to carry it. With honor. With heart. With him in everything we do. Because some lights go out. Others? They ignite stars. And he lit a galaxy. While the WWE Universe mourned loudly, with lights, tributes, and standing ovations. The quietest, most devastating grief was happening far from the camera's view. At home, his family was learning how to live without him. His wife, who had stood by him through injuries, long road trips, and lonely hotel nights, chose to stay silent in the days following the news. No tweets. No interviews. Just silence. Until one day, just over a month after his passing, she posted a photo. It wasn't a match photo. Not from WrestleMania or Raw or any arena at all. It was a photo of him in the kitchen. Barefoot. In pajamas. Cooking pancakes. Smiling wide, with flour on his cheek. Their child, maybe 5 years old at the time, was sitting on the counter next to him, giggling. The caption was just 3 words, "He was ours." And suddenly, the entire WWE Universe felt the weight of that. Because to the world, he was a legend. But to them, he was dad. Husband. Protector. Pillar. The one who made lunch on his rare days off. The one who fell asleep during bedtime stories with his boots still on. The one who left notes in school lunches before flying off to the next town, next match, next battle. We cheered for the wrestler. they loved the man. And now, without him, they were piecing life back together in shattered silence. WWE responded in kind, setting up a private trust fund for his children. Quiet. No press release. No announcement. Just an act of love. Because behind the spectacle, this company is still a family. And family takes care of its own. Meanwhile, fans began to honor his memory in the most unexpected of ways. One young boy, battling leukemia in a children's hospital in Texas, asked to wear a replica of the Superstars entrance gear during his next round of chemo. When asked why, he said, "Because if he can fight, so can I." Another story came from a young woman who had survived a violent relationship. She credited one of his promos, where he stared down the camera and shouted, "No one decides who I am but me," as the moment that gave her the courage to leave and start over. This wasn't just about a superstar. This was about a lifeline. And so, WWE decided to take it one step further. At the next major pay-per-view event, the company announced it would host the first-ever Legacy Showcase match, a main event spotlight where rising stars, handpicked by legends, would perform not for glory, but for honor. Each competitor would wear gear inspired by someone they admired. Each would step into the ring not to prove they're better, but to prove they belong. And headlining that card? The young man he mentored in the last year of his life. A quiet, humble kid from Canada. Not the flashiest. Not the loudest. But driven. Hungry. Honest. The one he called his second shot at doing it right. Before the match, that young man was handed a small envelope by a WWE official. Inside was a letter. Written by the late superstar himself. No cameras captured the reading of it. No transcription was ever made public. But later, in a post-match interview, the rookie, bloodied, exhausted, but victorious, looked into the lens and simply said, "He believed in me. And now, I believe in myself." Sometimes, that's all it takes. One voice. One nudge. One hand on your back when the world turns away. His family later confirmed the letter had been written just weeks before his death. He had apparently written dozens, some for friends, some for rivals, many for young talents he felt deserved to be told, "You matter." It turns out,